Hello and welcome to VTA's first webinar to discuss the draft plan for redesigning VTA's transit service. We appreciate you joining us and tuning in to get an overview of how the plan would change transit service throughout the county with a focus on changes in the South County in Morgan Hill and Gilroy. I want to first introduce your hosts. I am Cody Kratz, Administrator of Digital Communications. You're also going to hear from Adam Berger, Senior Transportation Planner, and Jay Tyree, Senior Project Manager. They have been working very hard to put together this draft plan and are very interested in sharing it with you and also hearing your feedback as they go back through it and before our board makes a decision. Make any changes that are needed based on your recommendations and questions and suggestions. Just wanted to cover a few ground rules first. This is one of VTA's first live webinars. It's a new way for us to connect with you. There's going to be a survey link at the end, and we appreciate your feedback. We're going to be trying to do more things like this, and we have a whole series of these. So if there are ways we can improve, provide information in a different way, we appreciate you letting us know. Also, if you enjoy the webinar and think there are other people who, either in your neighborhood or colleagues or classmates, someone who might appreciate learning about it, we appreciate you sharing the link to the YouTube video after the presentation's done. If you have questions or if you want to share a comment, there are a few ways to do that. First of all, it's best to watch the webinar on a desktop or laptop computer or with the YouTube app if you're on a smartphone or a tablet. In there you will see a live chat option. We'll be monitoring that and answering any questions that come in. The second option would be if you use Twitter, you can tweet questions or comments to us. Just mention at VTA, or use the hashtag VTA Transit Redesign. If you have any technical questions, you can send an email to social@vta.org. We will be monitoring each of these places and selecting questions to answer. We'll answer as many as we possibly can. With the time we have available, we're planning to end at 4 o'clock. So we'll hopefully get to all the questions that come in that amount of time. And we do ask you to be respectful. We will moderate out any inappropriate or misleading or off-topic comments or questions. But anything that is related to the transit redesign, especially in South County, we appreciate and look forward to hearing from you. So we also have a project website with a lot of information on it. It's at nextnetwork.vta.org. You can open that on your computer right now if you wanted to, or go take a look at it later. There's a lot of detailed information, including route by route information, so you can look at how your current service that you use would change. And there's also a series of project maps that let you see the whole system and how that would change from the current network to what we're proposing. So a lot of resources there, including an interactive map that you can drill into and zoom into. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam.
Okay, thank you, Cody. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This is a from-scratch redesign of our transit network. We're looking at where bus routes go, when they operate, which days of the week that they operate. In some way, we're proposing a change in terms of routing or frequency or hours of service for almost every single route in our transit network. So this is a very big thing. I'd like to start with some background here. We'll be talking first about the system redesign overall, and then in the second half of the presentation, I'll focus specifically on South County. We'll talk a lot about Morgan Hill and Gilroy. So we had three big goals coming into this project. The first is to increase transit ridership. This map or this chart goes back to 2001, and it shows the percentage change of population, which has gone up 12%, with the percentage change in ridership, which is down 23% over that time. We've been steady in growing since about 2005, when the worst of the dot-com crash was hitting Silicon Valley, but we haven't gotten back to where we were and it shows that maybe something about what VTA is offering just isn't as appealing as it was 15 years ago, given the choices available. So we're looking at what can we do in this redesign to bring back the appeal of transit and get our ridership up. Another is to improve our fare box recovery, which is a measure of a transit agency's efficiency. Fare box recovery rate is the percentage of our operating cost that is recovered through fares that come from riders. As you can see in this chart, VTA has been about one of the lowest agencies nationally in terms of fare box recovery rate, quite a bit lower than our peer agencies here on the West Coast and western half of the United States. And over the past 5 years, our fare box recovery rate has been in decline. We're now close to 10% here in 2017. So what can we do to improve that? Also, we're going to have a big change in Santa Clara County Transit in the fall of 2017. That's when BART is targeted to begin service to Santa Clara County. We're projecting 23,000 trips coming through the Milpitas and Berryessa BART stations. That's trips coming and going. And currently our transit services in those areas are inadequate to meet that demand. So we know we're going to have to redesign our services in that part of town to better connect BART into the system. We're about halfway through our project schedule. We started in the summer of 2016 with a 5-month-long wave of outreach where we went around the county asking folks, how can we make transit better? That turned into a recommendation for redesigning our transit network with a greater increase on ridership, which we'll talk about in the next few slides. In January, earlier this month on the 5th, we released our draft plan, and now we are in a public outreach phase where we're asking folks, how can we make the draft plan better? The last time VTA did a from-scratch redesign was in 2008, and between the release of the draft plan and the adoption of the final plan, we made about 50 changes based on good ideas that came from the public. We know the public knows their neighborhood to a greater degree of detail than we do, and we're relying on your help to make this better. Once public outreach period closes, which will be around February 20th, we will quickly go into developing the final plan, which we'll have reviewed by VTA's advisory and standing committees in March. Our board of director will approve it in April, and then in the fall of 2017, coinciding with the start of BART service, we will make all these changes in our network. So I mentioned the summer outreach that we did. What we tried to do was ask the public to step into our shoes as transit service planners and ask them to grapple with a lot of the decisions that we make when we're trying to decide what a better use of public funds is. We asked questions like, should we have the same amount of service on weekends as we do as weekdays? Should we focus more on increasing service in the peak period or have the same level of transit service all day? For the most part, we heard many things that reinforced aspects that exist in our system now, but we heard 3 big things that suggest that folks out there are ready for a change in our approach to transit. And those were that folks were willing to walk farther to get to more frequent transit. They figured out that the less time you spend waiting, the more time you spend going, and that's worth walking a little bit farther. We heard the similar thing that folks would be willing to walk farther to get to faster transit. We take that as an endorsement of more rapid services in our network that have wide stop spacing, that have higher average travel speeds than our local buses. And we also heard that folks were willing to put up with a transfer if it meant that the bus would be frequent. They could walk out to the curb, show up and go, and be on their way rather than wait a long time, but know that you only have a 1-seat ride to get to your destination. We also asked the public about the purpose of public transit. We have a bit of a challenging task as a transit agency in that there are 2 goals that we're asked to achieve. One is ridership and one is coverage, and they're both good, but the problem is that they are completely contradictory to each other. The ridership goal would have us increase services in areas that have transit supportive characteristics, that are dense and walkable, that have a mix of land uses and have all-day 2-directional demand. And the coverage goal would have us put services in areas that maybe don't have high transit demand, don't have those transit supportive characteristics, but we put the services there because we want folks who live out there to have some access to transit, and also to maximize the number of possible combinations of transit trips out there. what we heard from the public, what we heard from our board of directors was that they wanted us to increase the percentage of funding that we spend on ridership, and they chose an 85-15 balance. So what you'll see in the network is that the spending on services that are coverage purposed will be cut in half, with that balance going toward ridership purposed services. So frequency is big. Frequency is one of the things that we have increased quite a bit in our proposed plan. This slide is a map of all the frequent routes in our current network. Notice that many of them travel east-west more so than they do north-south. They don't quite build a great cross-county network of frequent services, but our proposal, which is here, proposes to expand that quite a bit. Now there's lots of north and south to go with east and west. The East San Jose grid has been expanded, and going westward, we've got more north-south routes on Bowers, Kiley, Great America, on Matilda, De Anza, increasing frequency on Winchester. And this is in the middle of the day. There are additional routes that get up to 15-minute service in the peak period. So I'll go back and forth. Current, proposed. Current, proposed. When you develop a frequent network, you really unlock transit service for folks who simply may not have enough time to wait for a 30-minute route or a 60-minute route or transfer between infrequent routes. We're hoping that we can increase the number of people and jobs that are within a convenient walk of the frequent network and hopefully improve our ridership. We're also proposing to increase our rapid services. This is a map of the 522. This is our current rapid service going from Palo Alto to Eastridge. We are proposing to add 2 more routes. One is the 523, which would be an upgrade of the limited 323 route that operates on Stevens Creek and San Carlos today. That would be extended on the western end to go up to North Sunnyvale via De Anza and Matilda, and on the eastern end to go to the Berryessa BART station via Santa Clara Street, Alum Rock, and King. Another route is the 500. This would be an upgrade to our Dash shuttle. The Dash currently goes between Diridon Station and downtown San Jose and local areas in the downtown. This would be a rapid service serving all those places the Dash does, as well as the Berryessa BART station. It would be the bus version of the future BART extension to downtown San Jose. As far as connecting to BART, we're proposing mini connections, 42 buses and light rail trains per hour at the Milpitas station. Similarly, over at the Berryessa station, there would be an increase up to 28 buses per hour, including those 2 rapid routes to downtown and West Valley, the 500 and 523. We're also proposing some big changes to our light rail system. The biggest is probably the addition of a new route, the orange route that goes between Mountain View and Alum Rock. Folks who are traveling in this direction today have to get off at the Tasman station to make a transfer. By linking these all together on a single route, you get there faster, and it connects the Milpitas station, which is currently called Montague, will be renamed Milpitas. All those travelers coming from BART get over to Mountain View in a faster and more convenient way. Because the orange line is extended, we're proposing to pull back the green line from Mountain View and have it turn back at Old Ironsides instead. We're also proposing to bring the green line up to all-day 15-minute frequency. It's currently 30 minutes in the midday and 15 during the peak periods. And the last big change is a shortening of the yellow line here. That's our commuter express service that sends 3 trains north from Santa Teresa to Bay Point in the morning and 3 trains south from Bay Point to Santa Teresa in the evening. We're proposing to turn that around at Japantown so that instead of making 3 trips every morning, we can make 6 and the same in the evening, and it'll have a greater percentage of its time be in that 87 corridor where it's skipping stops. So all in all, what's the effect on the county? This proposed redesign would increase the number of residents with access to frequent transit service by 160,000 and the number of jobs with access to frequent service by about 150,000, a 21% and 38% increase respectively. What that would mean for existing riders is that we're making a trade. We're taking transit away from about 1%, roughly 1,300 people, and we're increasing access to frequent transit for about 13,000 current riders. So from 76% to 88% of our current riders would have access to frequent transit. When you're trying to get your ridership to increase, there are two strategies. One is to make it available to more people so it's a viable option for more, which was what the last slide showed about trying to increase the number of homes and job on the frequent network. The other is to make more trips viable for folks who currently use the service, which is what this does by increasing access to frequent transit. We're also proposing to increase service levels on weekends. A lot of the folks who look to transit as a travel option tend not to have the Monday through Friday 9 to 5 commute. Many work in restaurants and retail and service sector jobs that are all hands on deck on Saturday and Sunday. So in the places where it's appropriate, where those locations are, we propose to increase transit service on Saturday and Sunday by 9% and 7% respectively. So let's focus on South County. In Morgan Hill, I've got your current service on the left there and the proposed service on the right. The Route 68 currently operates at a 15-minute service in the peak period and 20-minute service midday. We are proposing to keep the 15-minute in the peak, but to decrease the midday to half hourly. For Route 16, which currently operates hourly, but only in the morning and evening peak periods, what we found is that the vast majority of travelers on Route 16 are students who travel around bell times. So we're proposing to scale back the hours of this service to just when it is in high demand for those school routes. Since it would no longer be sort of an all-day or most of the day service, we're giving it a new name, 216 from previously 16. In Gilroy, we've got some pretty considerable changes here. Presently, Route 68 goes all the way down to the Gilroy Caltrain station. That would continue with the 15 peak and 20-minute midday changing to a 15 peak and 30-minute midday in this proposed plan. But the biggest change is in how all of the connecting routes at the Gilroy Caltrain station would be changed. Presently, routes 19, 17, and 14 record generally low ridership, and given the direction from our board of directors to decrease the amount of spending on coverage purposed routes and increase ridership purposed routes, we're proposing to decrease the amount of service on those connecting routes, sort of combining all of them into a two-way loop that we've labeled here Route 96, serving many similar destinations, but not all of them in downtown. We are proposing to upgrade Route 18, which goes to Gavilan College every 40 minutes now, to a half-hourly route in the future. I see that my label's off there. A half-hourly service on Route 97 to Gavilan College. So I'd like to help you visualize what this looks like, what the cumulative impact of these changes would be on access in Morgan Hill. These maps, which I'll go through a few of here, are called isochrone maps. What they show is how far you can get in a certain amount of time by using transit and walking alone. These assume an average wait for the bus that is half of the frequency. So a 30-minute route would have a 15-minute wait. In this case, we've dropped a marker at Morgan Hill at the Caltrain station, and we're comparing how far you can get in each of the networks. Green is an area that's accessible in the current network as well as the proposed network within 45 minutes at 8 in the morning. Yellow is areas that would no longer be reachable in that time within 45 minutes, and blue would be areas that you gain access to in that amount of time. In the case of Morgan Hill in the morning, it's a slight increase in terms of the number of people and jobs that have access from that location and to that location, 4% and 3% respectively. In the midday, though, it's a little bit of a different story. The decrease in frequency on Route 68 decreases how far you can get from that point by a little bit. There's no access gained in this scenario, only access removed. 13% fewer people reachable in 45 minutes and 11% fewer jobs reachable in that time. For Gilroy, somewhat of a similar story. During the morning, there is increased access to people and jobs using transit and walking alone at for a trip that leaves at 8 a.m., 6% for each. But in the midday, a little bit of a shift in the other direction. The decrease in frequency on the 68 limits how far north you can get in that amount of time, whereas the increase in frequency on Route 97 to Gavilan College increases access in that direction. I want to mention a few other things that VTA is doing that are relevant to this effort. The first is a paratransit policy update. Based on Federal Americans with Disabilities Act law, VTA is required to provide paratransit service. That's an on-call service for folks who are disabled or unable to use the transit system on their own. Based on our current policy, which is to provide service in areas that have fixed route transit, we would leave some current users without access to paratransit service as some routes are decreased or hours of the day are decreased. What we're proposing to do, and what our board of directors and what our general manager have made strong commitments to, is modifying our paratransit policy to ensure that no current paratransit users would be negatively affected by the changes, either in terms of ability to access paratransit service or the fare that they pay to do that. I want to talk about core connectivity. That's another project that VTA is doing that is running in parallel with this service redesign. Core connectivity is looking at ways that we might be able to provide mobility or a transit service in areas that are simply not good fits for big 40-foot fixed route VTA buses. These are generally places with lower levels of demand. We're thinking about perhaps contributing to cities that have shuttle programs so that they can expand those programs to cover more areas, or possibly subsidizing rides made by on-demand services like taxis, Ubers, and Lyfts. So more to come on that project. It's not necessarily a replacement for places that lose access to transit service, but it could be a way to find a better, more cost-effective fit for serving those areas than we can with our current tools in our toolbox of just fixed route buses. We're also looking at a fare study. We do this every 2 years, but some of the things we're continuing, since we're doing such a significant redesign of our network, is making sure that our fare policies work in harmony with the design of our network. One of the things that's been pointed out to us is that our current network design, and even more so the proposed network design, will encourage transfers. At the same time, VTA does not have a free transfer policy when it comes to fares. You pay $2 to get on one bus, you pay $2 to get on the next bus. If you switch to light rail, that's another $2. So financially, you're discouraged, even though the design of the system encourages you to take more trips. So we're looking into free transfers to see if that would be a better match. We're also revisiting our youth pass pricing and our eco pass structure. We know our youth passes are among the highest in the area. We'll see if we can maybe better match what other agencies are doing. We may also consider a change to the base fare. Probably all this would come as a package deal. So free transfers with perhaps an increase in the base fare could be a lower fare overall for most folks to pay. We'll see what we come up with as we do more work on this study. I also want to point out that we are working on developing a new frequency-based transit system map. If you look at VTA's current map, we've got all different route classifications, all different colors. It doesn't really give you a good sense for where the transit-rich areas are and aren't. We're going to follow in the footsteps of San Francisco and Los Angeles and put together a frequency-based map so you can see line thickness, line color, various other giveaways to show you where you can get on transit to make our system easier to understand. Just revisiting our project schedule again, we will be continuing with our public outreach through February 20th. We'll be asking you how we can make our plan better, and we're really hoping to hear from you. Should also mention that in November, VTA was successful in passing Measure B. It was a 30-year sales tax that will provide money for 9 different program areas, one of which is transit. That would work out to $500 million for transit, about 16 2/3 million per year. And we may be able to spend some of that on enhancing bus service, either restoring routes or making other routes more frequent. We're waiting on our board of directors to give us the green light to use those funds, but you'll see that in the final plan, which will come out in March for committee review, and then April for our board to review it. And then the big change would go into effect in the fall. Just a reminder of the project website again, you can get a lot more information than I discussed today at nextnetwork.vta.org. We've got detailed maps, detailed changes for routes, tools you can play with to see how your mobility changes. Also, lots of ways within that site to check out when we're having public meetings and when to and how to give us feedback on specific routes. Lots of opportunities to comment. So that's it. Cody?
Thank you, Adam, and thank you again for everyone for tuning in. Thanks for the overview of the draft plan. We'd like to open it up to questions and comments now. Just a reminder, we'll be answering as many questions as we can, responding to as many comments as we can. There are a few ways to do that. They're on the screen right now. There's a YouTube chat that you'll be able to see if you're using the YouTube app or your desktop computer. You can also ask on Twitter if you use Twitter, and we're also looking at the Facebook event for this event if that's how you RSVP'd. We'll answer any questions we have there. There was one that came in, and Adam, I wanted to actually have you back up to the Gilroy service changes slide. Dorian was just confirming, and I think you mentioned there was an error on the legend there.
Yeah,
clarify.
This is when you try to do too many things too quickly. So that legend where it says 60 minutes, that corresponds with the bright green color. The blue actually indicates a 20 to 30 minute demand. So Route 96 is proposed to be hourly, and Route 97 is proposed to be half hourly.
And I'm hoping the audio came through okay there. We just didn't have the mic pointed in the right direction, but can you say that last piece one more time?
Yes, so I just want to confirm that Route 96 is proposed to be an hourly route, whereas Route 97 is proposed to be a half-hourly route, despite what the legend says, and we'll clean that up for the next webinar.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you, Dorian, for catching that. Hopefully that makes more sense now. So as questions come in, there are a couple I wanted to ask you to drill a little further into, Adam. First of all, one of the sites we hear people ask a fair amount about is the County Social Services Office in Gilroy. Could you talk a little bit just about how the draft plan would affect service there? And actually, we're going to also have Kermit Cuff helping with some of the answers here. So hang on one moment.
Yeah, the Social Services Office is on Tompkins Court in Gilroy, a very awkward place to serve. We've only been getting 7 to 8 passengers per day on that to that office. So the proposal is to not do that part of the route on Murray, that the route would stay on Leasley. It would still go by Leasley and Murray, but that's about a half a mile away from the Social Services Office. The 68 line goes a little closer at Las Animas and Monterey, but there just weren't enough daily riders to justify the service on that loop. But the 96 would also be it's a two-way loop. It runs hourly, but in both directions. So that provides some more options too.
Thank you, Kermit. Also just wanted to make sure that, if people are interested in weighing in on the proposed changes, and they have others who may not even be on the webinar right now, but who feel similarly, what's the best way for them to provide feedback and to try to influence the process if they want to?
Well, we just want to hear from you. We would love to get constructive feedback, of course. Tell us about how you use transit or how you would use transit if it were better, worked better for you. If there is a specific need that you have that we're not addressing, please let us know. We'd love to hear suggestions for how to improve routing, or if certain hours need to be adjusted on the route. The easiest way to get in touch with us is to email us at community.outreach@vta.org. You can also go to the nextnetwork.vta.org website, or come to one of our public meetings and talk with us face to face. We want to learn more about you so we can make this the best plan that it can be.
So we have a couple other questions on the chat, also from Dorian. Thanks for the questions, Dorian. So the first is, how come there isn't a proposal to have a line along First Street in Gilroy, a place that is, as Dorian is putting it, dense, walkable, has a fair amount of development, and I was hoping you could address that, Adam. Is suggesting, or Jay, an extension of line 97.
Yeah, the First Street question, that's a good question. We looked into, how we could provide more service on First Street, recognizing that it's, better for transit. But, with a two-way loop to provide service on First Street, we could go east and west and cut over from Wren over there on First Street. But then you'd be cutting out all the residential area north of First Street, that's like Mantelli and whatnot. So ultimately, it came down to a trade-off of which area we'd like to serve, and I think that residential area north is pretty important to serve. But that's good input. We'll consider that.
Thank you, Jay. So, let's see, Dorian, you had one other question here, or really more a comment, a suggestion to consider a new school tripper between Christopher High School along Calle del Rey and Mantelli Drive, and then along Wren Avenue. Some of these comments and questions we get may be so detailed that the team needs to go back and take a closer look at the maps. I see heads nodding here. That's definitely something we'll look into, Dorian. So we appreciate the recommendations. Like Adam said earlier on, folks who live and work in these communities really know a lot about those communities, and we appreciate all the detailed and insightful recommendations you guys are able to provide. So thank you. So there's another question. The question really has, I think, to do with our express service, and Jay's actually going to answer that for you.
So yeah, you asked a good question about the 121, 168, and 185. That's a good point. We are not studying our express routes as part of this plan. What we're going to do is wait until the BART extension to the county opens, because the BART extension will change a lot of the regional travel patterns. So we're going to do a study later this year that will deal more with our express service. On the three routes you mentioned, the 121, 168, and 185, the 121 will stay the same as it is today. The 168, we just added another trip. It does really well, it provides service into San Jose. So we just added another trip on that one. That one will stay. And the 185, that's a new service for us that provides three trips northbound in the morning and three trips southbound in the evening from Gilroy, Morgan Hill, up to Lockheed Martin and East Wistman. So those three will remain.
Okay. Give you a couple more moments. I'm not seeing any additional questions here on the chat at the moment, but wanted to also just ask Jay to talk a little bit more about, or Adam, the different kinds of services that we're considering that are different from standard fixed route transit service that might help people down the road in an area like Gilroy and Morgan Hill that's a little more suburban. You mind talking a little more about that?
Sure. What we've seen in our own county with, say, Palo Alto, for example, or in other urban areas like in Los Angeles, where many of the cities down in that mega region operate their own transit service, is that locally oriented services, community shuttles, those can often be run at a much lower cost to operate than VTA can get big 40-foot buses out there down to areas like South County. So it's an opportunity to take public dollars and stretch them farther with other services. More rides per dollar spent. That's always something that we're interested in. So we're trying to think about getting outside of the box that we're in now, which is using a fixed route bus and a big bus for almost everything, to see what are the better fits for the areas that have different demand patterns. Maybe VTA focuses on what it does best, which is big crosstown services that really need all those seats on the 40-foot bus, and see what other options there are to help out in South County. We're currently meeting with a bunch of cities, asking questions about how this might work in their community. We're thinking about perhaps rolling it out later this year once our program gets more specifics. But yeah, I'd be very interested to hear on what folks have to think about that. Anything you want to add, Jay? No? We got it.
Great. Okay. Well, we are We still have time left, but if there are no further questions or comments, we'll probably end the webinar. And we appreciate that you all tuned in. Again, I'm actually change the slides here to go back to the slide that shows the survey. And again, we appreciate any feedback you have about this webinar. Did you like doing the webinar? We have some questions in there about the best times of day to do something like this. We have a whole series of webinars, a few more coming up, focused on places like South San Jose, Palo Alto, the West Valley. So be sure to check out the project website, which again is nextnetwork.vta.org. They're all listed on there. And we'd appreciate if you could take the link that you have to the recording of this webinar and share that around Morgan Hill and Gilroy with any friends, family, or neighbors or other contacts you have that might appreciate it. So again, the link to the survey's up there. The link to the recording is basically the same YouTube video link that you used to come and reach the webinar. And with that, we're going to again say thank you and say goodbye. You can always reach out to us at community.outreach@vta.org if there's anything we missed. Thanks.